Alright, so this is how I use the Octatrack. And I'm calling this a video journal because it's for myself to look back on and just kind of refresh myself if I forget certain things on how to use this machine. It's very complicated. You tend to forget things, especially shortcuts, stuff like that, if you don't use it every single day. I don't make my beats in the Octatrack. I make music in Ableton, and then I import that into the Octatrack. So, but this is also for you guys. I've gotten a lot of good questions since I've posted some jams. So I want to kind of just go through what my setup is, and it mainly focuses around the Octatrack. So that's kind of the highlight of the video. So we'll go ahead and start with this is Ableton. Let's go ahead and bring up the signal flow. Just kind of show this is my rig. So I have the Octatrack, the 404. The 404 I use for looping to trigger some samples. If I want to do live drum beats, I can pad out stuff on there. And then all my pedals are for effects, and I can send any of my stem tracks via cues to any of those pedals. And then I have the Morningstar MC8, and that triggers presets, some macros on the Octatrack. And then I have the Behringer foot pedal, which you don't see, which controls the V500. So certain presets, and then the expression controllers on there. So this is the setup. It's changed a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with it right now. I think it's got everything I want. The Octatrack gives me that live sampling, live looping, performance mixer aspect. The 404 offers another looper, some effects that the Octatrack doesn't have. There is some overlap between the 404 effects and the Kenotone ribbons, but the Kenotone does some things that I really like with like the magnetic dance mode, and it also has a pretty cool 4-track looper on there. So I have a couple other loopers on this machine, which allows me to be flexible. Say I want to load up another song on the Octatrack. Well, I do one song per project just because of limitations on Flex machines, and I use Flex machines for Flex recorders, but also for my drum stems. I use a Flex machine because I think they sound better when you do reversing and sample jumping and all that good stuff. So, what was I saying? The 404 is a looper. The Tensor is a looper. The Onward is technically a sampler as well, especially in freeze mode. In glitch mode, they can run by themselves once you've sent it. It latches on to a bit of audio. So I have quite a few loopers in the pedal setup. I have the Tensor is just an audio manipulating device. It can get really glitchy. It's one of my favorite pedals, if not my favorite pedal. The Onward is like a glitch delay, so it offers a lot of cool stuff. It sounds really good, stereo mode on vocals, on drums, and sometimes on overall mixes it sounds pretty good. The Lossy's good for spectral effects, the CD, MP3 effects. The auto bit, the bit crushers on it's really good. The filter is my favorite filter on the board. It sounds incredible. And then I do have a preset that does it sounds like a Commodore 64 with the sequencers. When you turn up the sequencer and the mult, and you set the pitch to the sequencer, it can get like a Commodore 64 and sound really cool. And then the Ultra Wave, haven't really dug too deep into it, but I've just been using it for simple clipping and distortion on drums or vocals. And more experimental, I haven't worked it in. The RE202 and the True Spring, these are kind of dub effects that I really like. The King Tubby style effects. with tape echo and spring machines. The RE202 is incredible. It's probably overkill for what I have, but I think it sounds great. The True Spring is a great pedal. It sounds really good. It sounds real. And then the Kenotone Ribbons is a newer addition, and it basically can do what the Autobit does. It can do what the Lossy does. I don't like the way it sounds spectrally compared to the Lossy. I mean, it's just a different flavor. I haven't stacked the two together and heard what that sounds like. But it can do saturation really well. It has a vinyl sim mode, vinyl sim compressor, like on the 404. That sounds pretty good. I really like the saturation. That's something that's really cool. But moving on. So that's all the pedals. Signal flow. Let's close that. So signal flow. We're coming out of the Octatrack into the UA Max. That's from the main outs. The UA Max is the end of chain mastering. So 1176 into a LA2A, and then that goes back into the DAW. Or if you want to send it to the stage, however this setup is. Then for my effects, I come out of the Q out. The Q out goes into the SP404, and then out of the SP404 into the tensor, and then all the way through the chain to the end of the ribbons, back into input A and B. And input A and B are going to be direct channels when you go into the mix menu. I don't use through tracks for input A and B. Now, briefly on why I put the SP404, I have had it first in the pedal chain and also last. I like it first because if I am triggering samples from the 404 and I want to trigger or add effects, I can do that. I can capture a loop in the 404 directly after the Octatrack, switch songs on the Octatrack, affect the loop, and then capture that loop back into the Octatrack. So I feel like the 4/4 being first in the chain is the way to go. That's the first looper. Then I have the tensor looper, and then I could capture again with the ribbons on the 4-track looper or on the Octatrack. So once it's loaded up the new song. So then input C and D, that's when my microphone plugs into the V500 into input C and D. That utilizes a through track, and that would be track 5 will be a through track from just my vocals. All right, and then MIDI signal flow, we come out of the Octatrack, we go into the Morningstar. Now, the only thing I send from the Octatrack to the Morningstar is sometimes I send from the MIDI channels cue messages back into the Octatrack to trigger certain cue assignments or turn off all the cue assignments. If I want to, set up for a certain effect on my vocals in a certain part, I can automatically set those cue assignments for when that pattern starts. So that's one less thing I have to do during the performance. If I know that, I'm going to put the onward on my vocals, well, when that pattern comes up, I can send a MIDI message from the MIDI track out into the Morningstar, and then it loops back into the Octatrack and triggers the audio track MIDI channels, which this says 9 through 16, but really it's only 9 through 15 because I do not control the master track with MIDI. I haven't had a use to do it, so I don't. And that's why you'll see I have 2 pedals on channel 16, the ribbons and the RE202. So back to the Octatrack, we're coming out of it, we're going into the Morningstar, and then out of the Morningstar, I should also mention time sync, MIDI time code. Is it right? MIDI time code. It's MIDI clock. I don't know why that word escaped me. MIDI clock. So the Octatrack is the master. It sends the MIDI clock. It goes into the Morningstar, registers that, and then that sends out into the Behringer pedal. I have it after the Morningstar, and then it goes back into the Octatrack. So then the Behringer, like I said, it controls all the vocal effects, and it gets there through the through output on the Octatrack. The through being a copy of the input um, going out into a MIDI splitter. And then for the MIDI splitter, it goes into the 404. Channels 1 through 4 are reserved for the 404. That's just the way that the 404 is set up. Bus effects 1 through 4 are on channels 1 through 4. The loopers on channel 1. It's really weird. It sucks because it eats up a bunch of channels. So I have to get creative on how I run everything. You'll see Lossies channel 5, Onward 6, Tensor 7, Autobit 8, True Spring 9, Ultrawave 11, and then the RE202 and Ribbons on channel 16. Oh, in the V500, the vocal effects are on channel 12. Now, how I can get away with sending CC messages to channel 12 and channel 16 when there's overlap with the Octatrack audio track MIDI channels? Well, like I said again, I don't use channel 16, so there's no overlap with the Ribbons and the RE202. But with the True Spring, the Ultrawave, and with the V500, you can define what CC messages it receives and what parameters that CC message controls. So you can choose parameters that the Octatrack doesn't recognize, and have that overlap on channels. So that's a workaround. And usually, I was messing around. You'll see the EN16 from the rotary encoder thing, and I've worked with some macros, trying to build up macros, but it's fun to do. I like programming stuff like that, but it's not practical. It's not actually like creating to an end, and you can kind of get lost in just making these programs, which is fine. But I haven't actually gone in and started to make macros that combine all the pedals, where I twist one knob and it's like the Octatrack crossfader. That's what I envisioned, like something like the Octatrack crossfader, but for MIDI. Because unfortunately, you can't do scenes for the MIDI tracks like you do for the onboard effects, which would be super powerful if you had that macro control in the Octatrack. But you don't, so it's just one thing you have to work around. So, well, it's one thing you can dream about. Maybe in the future they come out with it. So then to show you the machines and the tracks, I run 4 track stems: bass, drums, tops, and vox. The bass, the tops or instruments, really anything that's not bass, drums, or vox are considered tops. So effects, stuff like that. And then the vox track, those 3 tracks are static tracks. The drums track is a flex track. Like I said earlier, drums or flex tracks sound better when you reverse them. It sounds more natural. It sounds like an actual record, scrubbing back. Static tracks, it's clunky. It doesn't sound right to me. So, but you're limited on space, so you have to choose wisely. Like, okay, you can have one song per project, and then one flex track can be dedicated to just your drums. Now, there is some settings in the Octatrack where you set your reserve recordings, where reserve recording 1 through 4 are your track recorders. Or set your track recorders for 1 through 4. You can't set your track recorders for 5 through 8. Or in my case, what I'd want is 6 and 7. You can't do that. It's kind of silly, but that's just the way the settings are. So I lose memory because of that, because of the way I arrange my tracks. But it's more of a visual thing. I like to have my stems on the left, and then I want to have my Octatrack fun stuff on the right. My master, because the master's on the right, you can't move that. So it's like, do I put 3 of my tracks on the left and have the master, and then one of? I just didn't want to do it. I want to keep everything visually the same, and while it is a limitation, I can still get around it. And worst case scenario, I use a static track for drums, and that's what I do if there's not enough space for reserve recordings and stuff like that. So we'll go to Ableton and pull up a session here. So this is bit by bit. This song is interesting because it's in 6/4 in the beginning, then it goes to 4/4. There's tempo changes. All this stuff needs to be the time signature doesn't really need to be accounted for, but tempo changes need to be accounted for. So anytime there's a tempo change, you need to define that section as its own section or subdivide it into multiple sections. You have to separate that out. You can't have one file playing multiple times for just because of the way I'm explaining it. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. So first, let me explain again. There's 4 tracks: bass, drums, tops, and vox. The drums are a flex track. The other tracks are static tracks. Okay. Most songs are going to be one tempo. So the bass, the tops, and the vox are going to be one file. I don't need to subdivide it. The drums, I'm always going to subdivide by 64. And that allows me to be able to, one, I can do reversing and it stays in time when you chop it up like that, because it actually is reversing the individual slices. And also when you can do like LFO on the start parameter / slice parameter and do kind of beat juggling stuff with the drums. So it's just a little added feature. It's a little extra work, but it's worth it. But this song that has tempo changes, like it starts at 125, then it goes to 126, and it's not that it's the actual tempo is 126, it's just the length of that section is defined as 126. There's actually moments in the song where the tempo is fluctuating, but I just define, okay, this is one section. And then when you figure out that length, it automatically determines what the tempo is just based on the length. I don't know what the math is. 44 1K is the sample rate, how many samples that is, but the length dictates the tempo, right? So the drums are going to be separated by each pattern or each part. So the intro is going to be its own part. The verse is separated into 2 parts. Then you have the hook. Then you have the next verse, which is separated into multiple parts. Then I have the breakdown. Then I have the vocal sample part. Then I have the final part, the final hook, and then the outro. So there's actually 16 patterns within this song, which is good because each bank, we're thinking about the hierarchy of the Octatrack, each song is its own project, and then we have 16 banks. I'm only using bank 1. Bank 1 has 16 patterns. Each one of these parts, each one of these sections that we've sliced up with the drums are going to be a pattern. So, yeah. So that's that. So going back to the bass and the tops and the vox, we need to then separate each time that the tempo changes. So we'll define it as a new part. And I'll show you in the Octatrack what you're going to have to do in order to make this all jive together, because you have multiple different tempos and it can get tricky. So I've separated the bass, and there's bass 1, and then the next section here we're calling bass 8 because that's the corresponding drum pattern. So drum pattern 8, the next one being drum pattern 9, bass 9. Bass 9 goes over bass 9 and drums 9 and drums 10. Bass is the length of those two. And then it's base 11 I've sectioned, then base 12, base 15, and base 16. So each one of these parts are going to have to be, base 1 is going to have to be sliced at right here. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it'll all make sense here, or in base 8 is its own thing. It'll all make sense here once we hop over. So, how you export stems in your DAW, go watch a tutorial on that. You know, every DAW is different. You want to make sure that you're bouncing with master effects. And the most important thing is when you play, you put back your stems, does it sound like when all the instruments were separated and ran through your master bus? You want it to sound the same. You don't want it to sound any different or any less or more dynamic. Try to get it as close as possible. So watch a tutorial on that to figure that out. So going to the file structure, I can bring up a picture real quick. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. So this is the file. So okay, yeah, here we go. So basically I've exported all of them. You'll see base 1, 8, 9, 11, 12, 16, and then there's drums 1 through 16, and then the corresponding tops 1, 8, 9, 11, 12, 16, and all that good stuff. So it's separated. And then I'll show you, we'll hop over into the Octatrack and show you how that all looks inside there. So I want to show first my settings. We'll go to project settings, system settings, and then personalize. I don't use quantize live recording. I don't ever want to preview without effects. Mute focuses track. I don't like that feature. I don't like Q focuses track. Q mutes track. That's important because I run all my pedals like inserts. So when I send it in the queue, I need to mute the actual channel or it's going to be doubled. So Q mute tracks allows you to use, when you're not in studio mode, to use pedals as inserts. Disable function encoder. I leave that off. I think that's the stepped encoders. Disable yes no arm. I leave that off. Disable stop arm. I leave that off. I want to keep that. In other words, disable page auto copy. I want to keep that in case I want to just copy if I make the scale larger. The trig mode's 1, 2. That simulates you pressing the record button and then pressing it again to stop it. So I like that feature. Save samples to audio pool, and then beginning only for short sample name. I don't use quick mode. I don't use extra length grid record, and then LED brightness is on max. Control, like I said, master, track 8, and then track, the Q track is on normal, or Q send is normal. It's kind of weird. That's how it should have been. It was wrong there for a second. It was on C plus D, and I want it C/D, because C plus D is actually combines the stereo image, if I'm not mistaken. I don't use noise gate on either channel, and I don't do delay compensation. Sequencer, chain after pattern length. Again, I do arrangements, so I don't really chain patterns, but if I do, I want it to be after the pattern length. There's no reason for me to want to cut the pattern in half. Um, I've kind of already sliced it up into 16 parts that I'd want. Okay, I can loop this part over and over again. LFO auto change. I think that has to do when it goes to a next pattern. If you have an LFO, it resets. Could be wrong on that, but I leave it on. CC direct connect is off. I don't want the when I'm in mid. I think it has to do with the MIDI side. The knobs control the audio channels. I don't want that unless I define it. Memory, 16-bit on the flex machines, 16-bit on the recorders. Dynamic recorders, yes, so that allows more space if a recorder goes long. And because I'm using more only track 6 and 7 and never these tracks, it allows me to record longer and kind of cheat the reserve recordings like I was talking about before. So right now it says tracks 1 through 8. I can record any of those tracks, or I can change it to 1 through 2, but you can't do just 6 and 8. There's no way of doing that. Reserve length 23 seconds. That's good. I mean, we can bump it up now that we know that all the samples are already loaded. So that's good. And then we're going to get out of here. All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off. I had a little glitch with the camera. We're at MIDI. So control audio CC in. I want to be able to, that's enabled because I want to be able to control the audio tracks with CC messages from the MC8 and to itself because I don't have CC direct connect on. Audio CC out, just internal. So I don't send CC messages from the audio tracks. I receive audio notes in for certain triggers, macros, and then I don't send any audio notes out. Sync, I don't send transposition, so I don't even know it's on. But clock I send, that's very important. The Octatrack's the master. And then for program changes, I don't send them and I don't receive them. Channels, I don't run an auto channel. I define the channel. So channel 1 is track 1 is receives messages on MIDI channel 9, and then up to track 7 receives on channel 15, and then track 8, the master, doesn't receive any MIDI information. So let's see here. I kind of want to explain the track situation. So, like I said, we have bass, drums, tops, Vox. The bass, the tops, and the Vox are static tracks. The drum is a flex track. Moving on, track 5 is the through track. That's what I'm talking to you through is track 5. You know, you press this and then that, or you can set a trigger to pass audio. Input C and D. I have the volume jacked up. I don't have the amp up here. And then I record the mic on track 6. And just quick, going back to the microphone, I do a through track instead of mix direct because I want to be able to maybe add some sort of volume effects or sometimes a more dynamic effect. The V500 has a bit crusher, but and it has delay, has all that good stuff. But sometimes I want to make one effect move where I just bring the crossfader over and my vocal has delay on it. It allows you to do that. So I have the microphone recording, and also if I go into the recording setup, it's also set up to record the 404 as well. So any drum loops, stuff like that. And then on track 7, I'm on part 2 right now. Track 7 on part 2 is a flex track. On part 1, it's a pickup machine. So they function for two different reasons. So I can take this flex track, and if I show you the recording settings, it records the 404 and also the main. But when I send the macro trigger from the MC8, you can send it so it defines it only records source 3 or source 1. Sorry. So I just design it, or not design it, but program it so it only triggers what I want to record. In this case, it's just the main loop. And then I have the master track, which is always on. Can you turn it off? Yeah, and it still works. Weird. I don't know why it's playing right now. And so these are the only two recorders that I actually use, right? All right. So going back to the recorders, I can actually show how everything works. So with this mic recorder, I have a macro set up on the MC8. I hit the 404 effects, or not 404 effects, excuse me. I go to flex recorders on the MC8, and then I have Vox record, and it's a press release. So when I press it, it starts recording. When I release it, it stops recording. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you'll wonder, hey, why is it playing it so slow? Well, it stretched it to 83.3. It changed the tempo of the loop. If I was recording along with the track, we can show that. It can actually be in sync. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. So I can instantly do live loop. I can grab a loop immediately and, flip it. Gives me that improvisation capability where I don't have to set a trigger. I can actually live record what I'm doing and play it back immediately. Also for this track will record 404, so there's like a little drum break. I can kind of show how this works. So this so I can capture loops as well from the 404. Giving a good example of it with this track, I don't really have anything at this time, but that's just the capability of it. Why they're both sharing the same recorder? Well, I never really think that if I wanted to record the vocal and the 404, well, I'll just record on the loop, the master recorder. So there's a little bit of thinking that goes in there. And then to show how the main looper records on track 7, if I play this part, then I grab a loop. Oh, I forgot I had effects on. So I had effects on. Kind of explain what I did. The macro, I hit main record, it triggers the recorder on track 7. When I hit main play on the MC8, it triggers a macro to not only play that sample, but also to load up scene 16 on scene B and to move the crossfader over there. Now, obviously, I didn't physically move it over there, but I can show you. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's like a little you can actually see where the crossfader is from 1 through 16. It moves over when you press the macro. I'll do it right now. So it just automatically moved over when I press main play. I don't know what that glitch is. Let's try to get it without the glitch. It's weird. What's going on there? I don't know what that is. Let's try this again. What the fuck? It's not actually doing that on here. Oh, is there something weird going? Oh, I do have retrigger on. That's what it is. Duh. It's always something, man. So now we'll do it again. Back to this channel. Alright, so now it's. You can actually hear me sniffing. I moved the crossfader over so it actually mimics the position of being on 16. You can't hear it if you move it fast enough. And then I could bring back the original beat. Or I can affect. So that's recording the main loop or the master track. So what does this allow me to do? Why do I have all this? It allows me to capture live vocals on the fly. I can capture drums or samples from the 404 on the fly, and I can capture loops on the fly. So if I say, hey, I want to loop this one part, boom, I hit the loop, boom, hit play, and the macros are already set up. I can show you some examples of those macros too. The macros are already set up to trigger everything. You know, you would need 6 hands in order to do what one macro can do on the MC8. So just to show you briefly, go to the browser, the old Octatrack manual. So this is an example. So for example, the Vox record, okay? Okay, it sends a note on message, note 63 to Octatrack channel 6, and that's to trigger the record, if I'm right. Right, track 60 or number 63 is, let's see here on the menu. Yes, source 3 record. So it's recording source 3, and then when I release, it stops the recording. You're sending the, because it's in 1-2 mode, sending a note off message. Or I guess the record mode doesn't matter. There, I'm just sending an off message to stop recording. And then it sends note 41, which is audio track sample trigger when I release. So it plays the sample on track 6. And then also when I release, it sends a note off. Oh, that's because there's a weird glitch, and I actually posted in Electronauts about that. That's why this is here. I'm glad that I showed this in the example. You can get hung notes. When you do that, it bugs out, and you can't send any sample trigger messages. So I send all notes off message at the end of the record sequence to stop that bug from happening. So that's really the only main bug, other than when the time that the whole system kind of went down on this specific song where it got corrupted. It's the only time where I had that issue. But I know people that this machine's been around for a long time. Vets of this machine, I'm sure they know all the ghosts. And it's been improved over time, but there's still some things. And that's just one bug that I found that was a little frustrating, but you know, Electronauts, there was a pretty healthy post about it. No resolutions, but you know, at least it's documented. So that's macros. We're gonna go back to the Octatrack, and I showed you the functions of what I can kind of do live looping wise. Um, Also, like, say I want to record, I want to change songs, right? So this is where the pickup machine comes into play. I didn't need to stop. I was just stopping to talk. But I can play, and then on the 404, I'm going to record on the 404. So right now, you see the Octatrack stop, and you're still hearing audio. That's the 404, like a 2-bar loop or so. Now I can bring that back into the Octatrack, right? Or I can pitch it. So now it's a totally different speed. I can bring it back to the Octatrack. Let's go ahead. Pickup machine's recording. Okay. Now we're back on the Octatrack. You'll see the pickup machine's playing. It also synced the tempo. It changed the tempo to 118, which is the length of the loop that we just recorded. So I can really, I can double time it. Not double time it. I'm going to leave the length. So I can go to the original tempo. And I brought it back to the original loop. So with the macro brings it to 16, and then I can well, there's the loop again. So it adds an element of unpredictability of what can happen, but mostly it gives me the flexibility to just say, I want to record the next 4 bars, boom, and it'll automatically do it with these macros that I've set. So what's next? I kind of showed, and in that last example, I could have loaded up another project when the loop on the 404 was going, and it will still play through the mixer directly. It won't cut out. If you go to USB disk mode, it cuts all audio, but if you just change the project, it's not going to actually cut the audio. So that's good. It allows you to kind of, and I can show you. So hold on, let's go back. I still have the loop on here. So if I just change it to this project that we're on. So there was a little glitch there, but it was the same glitch we got before when we just moved over. So, but hey, we're doing glitchy hip hop. It's it's a feature, not a bug, right? As um, the dude from Mythbusters would say. All right, so I showed you that um, kind of how I can do live looping. Showed you a little bit of the macros. Oh, let's show you how I actually arranged the stems because it was kind of complicated. The drums track. So each pattern is an own section of the song, and then drums. So and then I said it was 16 sections. So there's 16 drums, in each flex track. So because it has different tempo changes, I have to separate the um, the bass parts by tempo changes as well. So the drums get laid in. If I load up drums one, I slice it up into 64 slices, like I said, to do the beat change, and then it tells you the tempo. So that's what the tempo you need to set on here. So 83.3, set the tempo on here on that pattern at 83.3. Um, and then tops one, we want to do the same thing. We want the tempo will not say 83.3. I think it was more than that, and I had to set it to 83.3 and make sure time stretch is on so you get all the fun time stretch stuff and everything kind of blends together. Sometimes you have to scroll from here from the trim length in order to get to the desired tempo, but as you see, it's 36 bars. Again, the time I'm not a math major. I'm just trying to figure things out, and this is the easiest way to figure out. Slice your drums up, and each of your drum sections is a pattern your on here. Fortunately, there's 16, so it keeps things simple. I'm not using two banks. And then slice up the individual like the tops track. I'll show you the slice. It's sliced into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the first tops one is sliced into 7 slices. Pattern 1 or pattern 2 um, is tops 1, slice 2. Whoops. Pattern 3, slice or tops 1, slice 3, and so on and so on. And I adjust those tempos. When I get to pattern 8, it's a whole new thing. Tops 8, you have to make sure you set the tempo to match what the drums tempo is. That's what's important, to do the drums first and get that all locked in. I recorded a couple different takes of me actually like loading this stuff in, and it's tedious, man. It's a lot of work to get stems into here, and it's frustrating. And I just kind of gave up showing that side of it because I run into so many, brick walls. I was like, what the fuck's going on? But you figure it out, and that's what this video is for. It's for me first to be able to look back and say, oh, this is how you do this thing. But also for anybody who, runs into the same issues or is just learning this machine and wants to know how somebody else uses it, or they're taking in every video like I did when I first got this machine. So, what was I going to say next? Like I said, I use arrangement modes. Um, I could get into that later. I feel like it's kind of boring. Arrangement mode is not really sexy. It's pretty simple. I'll set the arrangement kind of as the flow of the song, and then if there's any parts that I want to like loop over and over and over again, you can set it so it just keeps going for I think 99. I think that's the max it can loop over, more than you could ever do or would ever want to do, loop a certain section. But it allows you to kind of hold at a certain point, and then if you just move forward to the next point, once the pattern ends, that's the chain after pattern. The next pattern will kick in. So that's where that dynamic comes in, the chain after pattern. So I guess I could again. I don't really have too many arranger tips, but um, right now where I'm at in this Octatrack journey, it's been a lot of just learning, and really this was the original song that I loaded in here and played around a lot with to learn this machine. Um, I went the route of having four parts with 64 different effects and all these different dynamic effects, and I realized, basically each pattern, each section of the song, I kind of only want to cut to like one thing. So each one's going to have its own scene, and that's about it. So that's why I don't really use part three and part four. Part two is kind of the home ground. That's where I can, I'll set in the arrangement mode. I could show that in arrangement mode, you can actually set what scenes are loaded up on the pattern. Um, and that makes it easy. You don't have to think about, oh, I got to cut the scene number 11 on pattern 3. It automatically does it if you set in arrangement mode. All you got to do is just fuck with the fader, have fun. You've did all the hard work. But back to creating 64 different effects. It was good. It's good practice. It teaches you how different effects sound, like how to achieve certain things. I say go for that. Try that. Make as many different combinations of effects that you can use. Some people say some of the reverbs are unusable. That to me, that's just screaming for you to use them. I haven't found use for them. I love my spring reverb. I love dub style reverb. I think the dark reverb sounds good. The spring reverb ain't that bad. Okay, it is bad, but it's its own thing. You can figure it out. There's some interesting stuff. The comb filter's kind of interesting. I said comb, not cum. The comb filter is interesting. The bit crusher, it's cool. It's its own flavor. I got plenty of bit crushers, and they're all different flavors. So, uh, yeah, play with effects like I did, and then basically when you're ready to build your set, what you'll do is you'll create one scene that you kick to for each pattern. If you want to do two, you just set up another part and then kick it to it. Or say you want scene A is always scene A is mostly set to scene one, right? This side A is set to scene one, which I consider home, which is no effects, nothing. Um, so it's just the dry song. Um, yeah. I guess if you have questions, this is probably a good place to stop. If you have questions, fire away, and that'll give me an opportunity to address them in a future video. I'm sure people have a bunch of questions um, that can't just be addressed via comment. It's good to demonstrate it. And, I'm not the best public speaker. Um, Even though I rap and all that stuff, I'm really not good with this kind of stuff, with ex- um, going through my ideas and kind of teaching when there's nobody in the room except my kitty cats. Um, so I appreciate if you've watched this whole video. That's pretty incredible. I don't think I'm that engaging, but I hope you learned something. And again, if you have questions, just let me know and I will help you out. I'm racking my brain to think if there's anything else that I wanted to attach. I could have wrote an outline, but I feel like in the music space, in the education space, everything's really highly produced, and it's like it's more meant for them than it is for the people out there. And I say that saying at the very beginning of this video that this video is for me, but so don't listen to what I say. Um, I think that's it for now. Um, Maybe I'll do like some shorts showing some cool tips. I could do that. Um, but I think this is gonna be kind of it for a little bit for educational stuff. I want to focus on making music, and then once I get enough questions or ideas, maybe we'll go ahead and make some more educational videos. Maybe showing how vocal effects work, how I use the pedal board. Um, I don't really want to get deep dive into each pedal. It's really the only one that kind of screams that for me is the ribbons, and I don't know. There's plenty of demonstration videos on these pedals, so it's best to just kind of show how it works in a set and then explain it maybe if at a later point if somebody was interested. But again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something and have a great day.